My friends, now we go to a most unlikely place. You will not guess it. It is Dagestan, right? This is the Chechnyan capital of Grozny, and this is Dagestan and the capital of Makachkala. Sorry for the butchering of the name, but the biggest explosion happened here. A gas station exploded. The gas station was right next to some fuel storage tank, and up until now the reports are saying that there are 30 casualties and up to 60 injured. So a huge explosion. Dagestan and Chechnya are one of the only Russian Federation republics which are Muslim. Well, they are the only ones actually. And what the weird part is that Chechens and Dagestan have some rivalry, both being Chechen and under Russian occupation, and they're both fighting in Ukraine. In the recent days in the southern Ukraine, a firefight happened, an infighting amongst the Russian units, actually amongst the Dagestani and Chechen soldiers. They started arguing and then a firefight ensued. The Dagestani won the fight, they prevailed, there were casualties. And straight after that, this huge explosion happens in the capital of Dagestan. A coincidence? I think not. This is just to show how far the infighting has become in the Russian army. And believe me, when the partition of Russia is happening or Russia is being broken down, when a Russian civil war happens or Russia falls into pieces, it will start from the Caucasian area, from the Chechnya and Dagestani area. These are the first Russian republics to break away from the central Moscow power. Now, my friends, let's look over the Russian losses, and recently they are all the time the 7-day average. 540 liquidated personnel, which is incredibly high, and I've been saying this for a long time that at this rate Russia will need to announce a new mobilization. And if I say this, I always read the comments that you guys are saying, oh, Russia already has their hidden mobilization. Yes, they do. They're trying to lure people into the army with money, with promises, bigger pay, but this is not enough. They're not able to get 540 new men into the army every day, so they're losing more than they get. That's why I'm saying in the fall or in the beginning of 2024, I think Russia will announce a new open mobilization, and their goal will be to get us several 100,000 men. It will be a very big mobilization. Putin is afraid of it like fire because the last time the blowback from it was huge. About 1 million people left Russia after the announcement of the mobilization. Among them the brightest, smartest and the youngest workforce. So he's afraid of it, but he will do it. Russia lost 7 tanks, 16 armored personnel vehicles, 29 artillery systems, which is above the 7-day average. Credits to the Ukrainian drone crews here. 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, 29 UAVs, 8 cruise missiles. Also, reading about the cruise missiles is every time sad because Russia, yes, they lost them, but they lost them to Ukrainian cities because they're firing the Ukrainian cities and they did one of those huge terror attacks yesterday. So this is a very sad number every time you see a number in the cruise missiles list here. They lost 22 vehicles and fuel tanks and 3 special equipment. My friends, let's go to Ruzzian, and more information has surfaced about the enormous Russian retreat from this settlement, from this southern road. Russian military bloggers and officers on the front have reported that why a Russian company-sized unit retreated was that the armor that was supposed to give them support didn't go to the front line because the tank crews and the drivers of the tanks refused to go, giving explanation that if we go closer to the front, the Ukrainians will blow us to bits, which is the truth, and we're going to look at some footage later in this video. But the thing is, without armor, it's very difficult to defend, and if your tank crews refuse to obey orders and cover the infantry is kind of useless. Like tanks are useless without infantry. So this is an open mutiny against Russian command structure's orders. And this is why we saw the retreat and of course the Ukrainian cluster munitions on the retreating Russians. The military bloggers also report that on this front, however you call it, Velika Novosilka axis, there is an insane problem of alcoholism in the Russian units. They drink like crazy, they drink like there is no tomorrow, because for some of them there is no tomorrow. And this coupled with an insanely low morale and the lacking of armor, well, this is what you get. We have all seen the footage of about a company-sized Russian unit retreating in one single line of men getting hammered by cluster munitions. The situation is dire for the Russians. Also, what the Z bloggers complain about this frontal area is that Ukrainians are using a tactic of very small mobile groups of armored vehicles and men that drive close to Russian positions and then drive back. They only drive there to activate the Russian defensive artillery, which then, after they have shot, are paled out by Ukrainian anti-artillery fire or counter-artillery batteries, which include HIMARS, and immediately if the Russian artillery opens fire, about a few minutes later they already get pounded by HIMARS. This is the Ukrainian tactic right now. It is incredibly aggressive and it is also quite wasteful because you use a lot of HIMARS munitions, but this is what they are for. Russian military bloggers also report that HIMARS missiles are being fired into trenches to take out Russian frontal positions. Now, this is not what HIMARS are usually used for, but this shows that Ukraine has pushed on another gear. They're on another level of attack or pushing now. They're using HIMARS on smaller targets, not only high-value targets. This means that something big is coming. This is the foreplay for something big. Now, my friends, let's go to Kozachki Lageri, which is the Ukrainian bridgehead over the Dnipro. Ukrainians recently crossed, it doesn't show it on this map, I feel like I say this all the time, but Ukrainians crossed this Koinka river right here. They're now on this southern side of the Koinka river, and they made a company-sized unit of Russian forces retreat. And we have it on this footage. You can see here, Russians are retreating and Ukrainian artillery is hammering them precisely on top. I mean, Ukrainian artillery is all on the other side of the Dnipro river. They're not bringing it over. But the fact that this footage looks extremely similar to the Velika Novosilka Ruzzian retreat footage means that the situation and the morale and the defensibility of Russian positions is getting lower. Russian units report here that the losses were close to a company with wounded and KIAs, which are enormous for one area. We don't know how far the Ukrainians liberated the territories, their fields, but we know that the Russians have been made retreat, and I'm sure the Russians will send reinforcements into the area because the defensive positions right here are manned only by conscripts and mobilized. Extremely low morale and alcoholism. Russians will bring back perhaps some descending forces. We'll see in the future. And now, my friends, let's go to Andriivka, which is one of the settlements south from Bakhmut. Russians made a pretty big counter-offensive here, and here is why we saw those infantry fighting vehicles losses so high during the Russian losses chart. In Andriivka, they pushed with T-90Ms, the most modernized Russian tanks, because the T-14 Armata doesn't exist, really. And on this footage, you can see all of these T-90Ms and an MTLB destroyed on a field, so this counter-offensive failed. But to commit 3 of their most modernized tanks and an MTLB, and there was a 5th vehicle also, into one attack like that shows that the Russians are a little bit desperate. So here we have a video of the Russian 2023 military expo, new military tech of Russia. And here we have Sergei Shoigu, the Russian Minister of Defense, seeing Alesha the robot. I guess this robot has some kind of military goals, or why does he exist here? I don't know, maybe it's a Russian Ministry of Defense project of new robot soldiers, Terminators. Well, let's see what Shoigu thinks about this new robot. He looks at it, he's a little bit afraid of it, going closer a little bit, maybe it's gonna bite me. What is it gonna do to me? Oh, they stare down a little bit. Shoigu is like, what is this new technology? I don't understand it. Is it gonna kill? Can I use it as cannon fodder? And now he's like, I cannot use it as biomass. It's not biomass. Screw it. I don't like it. Let's go away. He brushed it off like it's nothing. This shows you the innovativeness, or the lack of actually, of Russia. They like cannon fodder. They like biomass. They like brainwashed people by the millions sent to the front. They don't like innovation, robots, or anything they cannot understand. Look at this. Look at this hand move. This is how I would react to Russian future. You know. But all jokes aside, I have a thread from Ruble here about the Russian 2023 Army Expo. Let's look what they have. And this first vehicle, I think you can recognize by the first months of war, this is the Russian reconnaissance armored vehicle Tigr. But it's somehow very heavy. It's armored, yes, this is the Tigr MSPN armored version of it, and the issue here is that it has, why I'm saying the issue, because it seems very capable, it has a remote control turret on top, the Arbalet DM remote control turret. The thing is, we saw a lot of these vehicles at the beginning months of war. I remember covering these videos where these vehicles were burning because, you know, they couldn't take an RPG. Honestly, the simplest, cheapest RPG one took out this vehicle. Now they put armor on top. We don't see any more of these vehicles because Russia doesn't have any. They wasted all of them on the beginning months of war and they lost all of them. I guess now they're buying new ones with armor because the previous ones burned to the ground because they didn't have enough armor. I gotta say though, I kinda like the look of it. Here we see a Russian modernized version of a BTR-82. BTR has been in production from the 1950s and it's one of the most produced infantry fighter vehicles in the world. I think the only one more produced is the M1113 of America, of USA. Correct me if I'm wrong here. Now a BTR is a horrible vehicle by its design because most of the BTRs had the doors right in between on those four wheels right here, and you're supposed to dismount from the vehicles while it was moving, and one wrong move and you will be under the vehicles. Now this BTR of course has the door in the back and in the front, which makes it different, a little bit better. But the first ones with the doors on the sides, I don't know what the Soviets were planning. They're like, 5 people dismount, one of them is under the vehicles. It's natural decay in the Soviet Union, don't worry about it. Of course, then we have anti-aircraft cannons here. I'm not sure if these are automated or not, but if they're in 2023 Army Expo, they better be automated or they're ancient. They can be mounted, of course, on the back of the trucks. I have seen these cannons mounted on the back of civilian trucks, also work very well. Here we see one of the modernized Russian MRAPs, looks very good, as does the T-14 Armata. Russia is very good in producing these small batches of exponents or testing batches of military vehicles, but they have issues with mass producing. I mean, this automated cannon, look, it looks killer, it looks amazing. I'm sure this vehicle is amazing, but they cannot mass produce it, and that's the only minus. They cannot mass produce the T-14 Armata. They cannot mass produce the Su-57, which is an amazing plane, but they just cannot make it. But the newest Russian innovation is right here beneath your eyes. This is a mobile Russian military church. It is on the back of a car and you can drive it on the location. In 1 minute you can open the tent up and boom, you have a shrine. You can have brainwashed Russian soldiers go and worship their, I don't know, Putin, because Russian Orthodox Church is not about God, religion or any kind of faith. It is about brainwashing people, and it is the lengthened arm of the Russian intelligence services. So if it's now on the battlefield, then you have internal control suddenly on the battlefield. My friends, in the Cuban region, a Russian Il-39 training jet crashed. Plane crashes are becoming very regular in Russia because they are known for their bad maintenance, or they're known for the lack of maintenance they do on planes. They don't do any. I don't know if they don't care or if they don't know that they have to maintain their planes. They don't do any. And planes are very notorious to crash when you don't maintain them. So as our choppers. This Il-39 took down with the explosion the commander of the entire training aviation base, Colonel Vadim Kurov. He passed away on the site. And also the senior flight instructor, Mikhail Lipatkin, got seriously injured and was transported to the hospital. I remember covering plane crashes throughout this war dozens of times. They happen all the time. Russians don't learn. They just take the next plane because they have dumb iron. They have the planes. They're not maintained. They take the next one and use it until that one crashes. When the large-scale occupation of Ukraine started by Russia, the ruble crashed. And then the Russian central bank took some decisions, raised interests, and then the ruble normalized for a year. So this was what we call a propping up of the ruble. You can do this temporarily to a currency, but in the long term it doesn't save you. It's like hiding the ruble's true value. Well, now the truth is out there. Despite all the Russian central bank has done, the ruble is in a free fall. For $1 right now, you get over 100 rubles. Right now, we have hit the low that was immediately after the Russian full-scale invasion of 24th of February. The ruble crashed. We are at that crash right now, and it's going worse. So the Russian central bank raised the interest from 8.5% to 12.5%, which is an incredibly aggressive step. But again, this will only take the money out of Russian regular people's pockets, and it would really not fix the country's economical situation. It will only prop up the ruble temporarily again, so Putin can say, good job, and then it goes down again. They are like putting the problems under the carpet. They're not really fixing them. The real problems are that the Russians are losing young workforce, the sanctions, the lessening of the exports of oil and gas products, the insane amounts that Putin is pumping into the Russian army. which is about 30% of the entire country's money goes to the army. Officially the number is smaller, but there are hidden expenses. Talking about how much money goes to the army, for example, Shoigu, Russian Minister of Defense, will be allocated 400 billion rubles, which is about 4 billion USD, to change out Wagner in Africa, to replace it with the Russian Minister of Defense, or to allocate Wagner onto the Russian Minister of Defense in Africa. This is only allocated for one region. It's not for Ukraine, not the Russian Far East region, only for their African campaign. Let's call it what it is. If they are able to allocate 4 billion USD just like that, just for a single campaign. I mean, it's not the United States of America, it's Russia we're talking about. They're not that rich. That shows how much money the Russian government, Putin and Shoigu, are stealing from the people. All of it. All that Russia makes is going to the military. 4 billion, boom, just like that to Africa. The numbers going to Ukraine are even worse. Even bigger. Talking about Shoigu, I have a tweet here from Anton Gerashenko. Shoigu's approval ratings are below the floor. They are less than 0. Russian people do not trust their Minister of Defense. But Putin doesn't care, because for Putin the most valuable currency is loyalty. Shoigu has been proven to be loyal to the end. It doesn't matter that he's incompetent as hell. He is loyal, and that is what matters to Putin. Only 8.9% of the respondents said that they trusted Shoigu, while 8.5% did not trust him. Before the start of the full-scale invasion, 18.8% of the Russian answers trusted Shoigu. You cannot be less popular in Russia than Shoigu. I think he is the most unpopular figure in the Russian command structure, period. But it doesn't matter to Putin. It doesn't matter, because he's loyal. And it's also very good for Ukraine. The more incompetent the Russian Minister of Defense is, the better for Ukraine. So don't change him. Don't change him, Putin. My friends, we have had a big patron. I don't get much big patrons because most of the people are tier 10, which is very good. I'm thankful for. But this one guy, boom, he decided, okay, I'm gonna break the algorithm. I'm gonna be a big patron. So he's anonymous. His name is MJ. So thank you, MJ. In Estonian, I would say MJ. Thank you for becoming a Patreon. Then we have Frannar Kretarsson. Fannar Kretarsson. Thank you. Then we have Tison de Helft. Impossible name, but thank you for becoming a Patreon. And finally we have Anders Eitskräm. What's with the Nordic names? But thank you. Kiitos, or how is it in Swedish or Norwegian? I don't know. Skål, my friend. Thank you for becoming a patron. If you like my channel, then the Patreon link is in the description below. My friends, go and check out my Twitter account, because the most important news and events happening in the Russo-Ukrainian war, you will find them there in the most compact form possible. If Ukraine liberates a settlement, you'll be the first who know about it. Also check out my Instagram, guys. I'll post all my travels to Ukraine there. Until my next video, my friends. Slava Ukraini.